Tottenham Hotspur have a winger crisis on their hands, so it's no surprise that Spurs have been linked with a multitude of wingers already this summer. Now, with Thomas Frank coming in as the new Spurs manager and a big focus being placed on signing experienced players, I'm going to be taking a deep look into last year's Premier League data to see which wingers for the right and left side Spurs need to sign this summer. Now, since it was rumoured that he was going to be our manager, I have done a lot of research into Thomas Frank and his tactics at Brentford, which I broke down in a lot more detail in my last video on my channel. Now, of course, in that video, I look into how Thomas Frank wants his team to play, especially the forwards, which helps me determine exactly what stats we're looking for when researching potential targets for Tottenham. And now look, the reason I'm focusing so heavily on data is because Thomas Frank has said it in multiple interviews in the past that him and his staff at Brentford place a massive focus on data, whether that's to do with the tactics in games or to do with the recruitment of new players. So I'm taking that approach, applying that to potential transfer targets for Spurs to see if we together as a collective can determine which wingers will be perfect for Thomas Frank at Tottenham. So let's look at what the Brentford forwards were really good at last year to help determine what stats we are looking for when looking for new signings. Now, in that last video, there was a massive importance on pressing high up the pitch to win the ball back as soon as possible. So we're going to be looking at tackles in the attacking third to see how good the forwards are at winning the ball back quickly and high up the pitch. And look, we can see that Damsgaard's number 1, Mbeumo's 13, Sade's 30, Janelt 33. So they've got 4 of their players in the top 33 across the whole of the Premier League. Definitely a key stat to look forward to. Now, the other thing that was really impressive about Brentford is just how efficient they were at scoring. They didn't take as many shots as other teams, but when they did shoot, they scored more than most. So we're looking at their goals per shot ratio. You see Wissa's quite high up, than 8th with 0.21. Sade reached a 0.2 and Mbeumo 0.19. But not only did they have to be good finishers, they also had to be good at setting up their other teammates because, again, like we said before in the previous video, you can go watch it there in more detail, but there was a big emphasis on creating the highest XG chances, which means getting the ball into the center of the penalty area for people to have the highest chances of scoring. So key passes is also a big thing where we can see, obviously, look, Mbeumo's at number 5 with 70, Damsgaard at number 7. Boom, there you go. You can see it there, 70 and 63. So yeah, clearly Brentford were also very good at creating a lot of key chances in matches. Now, another area I wanted to focus on is the ability to create shots and goals from taking on defenders, because I believe where we'll set up a little bit different to Brentford is that we're not necessarily just going to exclusively be this counter-attacking direct side. I think there's going to be a lot more games where we're going to have more possession, whereas Brentford probably didn't last season. For that to work, we need players that are good dribblers and then can take on their defenders and do it effectively. We want them to be able to create goals, create chances from taking on defenders. So again, we're going to be looking at shot creating actions from take-ons, goal creating actions, and then we're going to be looking at goal creating actions from take-ons as well as how successful they were at taking on defenders. Another key stat into how Brentford and Thomas Frank operates is to do with their crossing. There's been multiple interviews, especially with James Walcott, explaining how when he needs to break down a low block, they need to be good at crossings. He said combination plays become a lot more difficult and passing between the lines is a lot more difficult when teams just sit up inside their box. So you need to be able to cross the ball from the half spaces and out wide and win your aerial duels to be able to create and score a lot of chances against low blocks. So crosses and crosses into the penalty area are absolutely key. So with that being said, let's have a look with what I found in the Premier League last year. We're going to be starting off with the right wing. Boom. Okay, this is a very nerdy spreadsheet that I have made from my findings. Now, what you'll notice on the players on this side, I do have Mo Salah, I do have Saka. Those two are there just because, in my opinion, they are the best right wingers that are in the league. They're obviously never ever going to come to Spurs, but I put them more for comparison's sake to see how the rest of the Premier League players handle against Salah and Saka. And I've also included Dejan Kulusevski and Brennan Johnson, as they are technically our main right wingers that we have available at Spurs right now, just to see how other players compare to our own as well, and if they are an upgrade. And so this is my shortlist. It's kind of what I came up with looking at these tables on FBref, and these were the ones that sort of came up the most and are players that we've also been linked with. So Mohamed Kudus, Bryan Mbeumo, obviously we're going to be linked to him anyway, being at Brentford. Yankubu Minter, Tyler Dibbling, Jared Bowen, a little bit more unrealistic, but I thought I'd put him in there just in case. Dwight McNeil. And then this last one is a little bit of a rogue option, a rogue shout, and that is Oscar Bob. Now, there is hardly any data on him last year at all because obviously he was injured for pretty much the whole of the season. But this guy is a quality player. He is a star, a one for the future. Man City have made a bunch of signings. So if there is room for Oscar Bob to move, he is definitely someone we should be considering. I've also kind of highlighted who's effectively won that category, the top 5. So the dark green here is number 1, and the sort of the lighter the color gets, the worse it is. And obviously if there isn't a color at all, then they're too low down. And these brackets sort of show, I mean, for goals case, it's non-penalty expected goals, expected assists. I know a lot of you might moan about expected data, but believe it or not, that is what Thomas Frank and his team will be looking at. And then for the rest of these stats, I've also got in brackets their per 90 stats, because naturally some of these players, as you can see here, didn't play as much as others. Now I'm going to have it blurred here so you can't see, but what I've also done is sort of tally up the points. So I gave the dark green 5 points, and then the lower it down it goes 4, 3, 2, 1, added them up, and just to kind of create a picture of who was good across all of these statistics. And then I also have my preference at the end. Now let's look into the data in a little bit more detail. And it's also interesting to know that Brennan Johnson is pretty much the only right-footed player in here. I do think we will be targeting a left-footed player. The wingers for Frank like to cut in on the inside and whip in a ball on their left foot into the box. Naturally, when it comes to goal scoring, Salah was absolutely clear this season. He was a joke. And Wemo with 20 goals was absolutely insane. But notice how his non-penalty expected goals was 7.5. He did score a lot of penalties. He massively overperformed his XG. But for me personally, he's always been an overperformer in the Premier League. So that's just to me. He just knows how to also score some great goals. But let's have a look firstly at goals per shot. So like I said before, Brentford players have to be extremely efficient when scoring. You can see on Mbeumo there with 0.19 is actually the second highest amongst these players. And look who is first. Our very own Brennan Johnson. And I said this in the last video, so again, check it out if you haven't already. I think Brennan Johnson is going to be key under Frank. He wanted him 2 seasons ago as well before we nabbed him. However, we need a different profile in this position. He's not going to be a player that crosses the ball into the box, because that's just not his game. I mean, if we go across here now, Brennan Johnson for crosses was extremely low. A one to look out for here, Yankubu Minter, the young Brighton right winger, in my opinion, is different gravy. Now we sort of move on to the dribbling aspect of the winger. How good are these players at taking on their defender? So the key stats here to look for are successful take-ons, and also when they do take on their defender, does it lead to a shot? Does it lead to a goal? Because again, there is no point being a very good dribbler if it doesn't lead to any goals or chances. Now, as much as Bryan Mbeumo isn't necessarily a dribbly winger, so to speak, like, that's not really his game. He's actually quite high up for successful take-ons in the Premier League at 52. 1.37 per 90 is not necessarily the highest. Remember, he has played an insane amount of minutes. So even though the actual number is high, his successful take-ons per 90 is lower than others. It's lower than Salah. It's only just above Bowen's. It's way lower than Kudus. Kudus is an absolute machine, and you don't need stats to tell you that. You need to watch him play. He commits so many take-ons in matches and is very good at them. He is a very, very, very good dribbler. But like I said, even though Kulusevski has committed less successful take-ons overall, he actually does them more per 90 because he's played less. Same for Tyler Dibbling, same for Yankubu Minter, and these two are both over 2 per 90. And I've actually, considering how little minutes they've played, have done nearly as much as Mbeumo as well. These two youngsters are definitely ones to keep an eye on when it comes to players that are very good with their feet. But again, look, goal-creating actions from take-ons. Yankubu Minter, as we can see here, 6, 0.29 per 90. He pretty much outshines everyone. He's got more than Salah. That tells me that he is from what we've seen so far, he is a very good dribbler. And not only that, when he does take on players and defenders, it usually leads to a goal. Definitely more so than some of these other players. Other ones that are quite high in this regard are Bukayo Saka. Dwight McNeil as well, funny enough, is quite high, but he's obviously played the least amount of minutes of anyone. So you kind of got to take his data with a little bit of a pinch of salt. In my opinion, that is really impressive from Yankubu Minter. And by the way, if any of you are unaware, a goal creating action or a shot creating action is the 2 moves prior, leading to either a shot or a goal. So that could have been a pass from him. It could have been a shot that they had and a rebound and someone scored. It's just within 2 moments leading up to a shot or a goal. Now, moving on to the next section is the crosses. Are these people going to be able to break down low blocks with their crossing ability? And just look at Mbeumo's numbers. Insane. 202 crosses. That sheer volume is insane. Crosses in his penalty area, he's number 1 again with 19. This really does show how much of an emphasis Thomas Frank puts on crosses, because that's also to do with corners, that's to do with set pieces, and we all know that he absolutely adores set pieces. That's what we learned in our last video anyway. Now, just to compare that to some other players, I mean, Salah, not really a massive crosser of the ball. Someone who has not necessarily committed a lot of crosses across the season, but crosses into the penalty area is actually quite high as Mohamed Kudus. As you can see, our boys, Dejan Kulusevski and Brennan Johnson, both really struggle in this area, and that is probably down to our game. Johnson is a back post merchant. Kulusevski's obviously played a lot more in the middle for Spurs this season as opposed to on the wing, so naturally they don't cross as much during games. And look who's relatively high up again. Yankuba is decent. 91's not too bad. Given the amount of minutes that he plays, 4.46 per 90 is pretty decent. That probably puts him about 4th. But Dwight McNeil here is also very, very high up, considering he basically played the third of the minutes that Mbeumo has. He has crossed the ball 105 times, pretty much over half of his amounts as well, and 6.91 per 90. Now, the problem with Dwight McNeil as an option is, look, he seems to be good at crossing the ball, or he seems to cross the ball a lot anyway. He's decently efficient at shooting, but again, he's not this dribbly winger. That's not the sort of type that we need. So I don't know. He's just someone that I've just put on there as a little bit more of a rogue shout, but not really someone I'm considering. And then on to key passes. Who are the creators? Who's going to be able to set up other players in the team? And Mbeumo has done this a load because he drives into the box. A lot of the time he passes to Wissa in the middle or Sade in the middle. So who's also creating as well as scoring goals? Naturally, Salah has just been phenomenal with the sheer amount of assists that he has. Kulusevski as well, key passer, but again, slightly skewed because he is playing in the middle more now. Saka, understandable, one of their main outlets on the wing. And then finally, we're looking at the tackles in the attacking third. Like I said, Brentford and Thomas Frank, they press high. Usually in a front two, they press very high up the pitch to try and win the ball back as high as possible. And again, this is showing excel in that. And Mbeumo is brilliant at it. He's got 16 across the season, 0.42 per 90. The next highest, Dejan Kulusevski. He is very good at winning the ball back, apparently. Tied for this sort of 3rd and 4th place, you've got Jarrod Bowen and Mohamed Kudus. Look who's back again. Yankuba Minter has won the ball 10 times in the attacking third, 0.49 per 90, which is higher than Bryan Mbeumo. It's higher than Mohamed Kudus. It's even higher than Bukayo Saka, which for me is very, very impressive. This is just a bunch of notes that I sort of made, like the fact that, you know, Mbeumo is not really known for his dribbling, but he crosses a lot well into the box. Mohamed Kudus is an insane dribbler, but also has a high release clause this summer. Now, Tyler Dibbling is one that I included because we have been linked heavily with Tyler Dibbling. I've not really mentioned him once. The issue is, 1, he's 19. 2, Southampton were absolutely dreadful this season, so he couldn't necessarily shine when it comes to the volume of, I guess, chances created, successful take on, so on and so forth. I mean, that he seems to be pretty decent at. It's very, very, very similar to Minter's statistics. I think when you look at the per 90, it's quite impressive because obviously he's played less minutes. The fact that he is higher than Mbeumo, he's higher than Salah, he's higher than a lot of these other players. When you watch him play, he is very entertaining, and I think I said that here. Looks entertaining in real life. He's great with his feet, but his output this season has just not been good. But I think that just speaks volumes more to just how crap Southampton were this season. Hence why tackles in the attacking third might not be high, because let's be real, how often were Southampton in their attacking third? I think they were having to defend a lot of the time. But even then, when you just look at other sides to his game, can he cross the ball well? Does he cross often? Not really. Definitely someone for the future, but look, in my opinion, isn't an absolute priority. If you're trying to bring in someone that is a little bit more experienced, that is going to take you up that next level now, Dibbling is not the one. I'm not saying we can't look out for future stars. We definitely should. But just an example, Yankuba Minter is 1 year older than him, and he is putting up way better numbers. Already got more goals as well, and he's played less minutes. He's got more goals. He's got 4 more assists than him. He's able to take on his players more and does it a lot more in games. That's why, in my opinion, we're going to go look into the final section now of what my preference was. And this is sort of the points tally. No shock to see that Mo Salah came out as number 1, but Mbeumo was only 1 point behind. The numbers then drop very significantly afterwards. So those are sort of the points tally. But now what was my preference? Now, again, this is partly to do with also watching them in real life, but also kind of how I interpret the data. I don't think it's just a case of whoever gets the most points wins, because context needs to be applied, right? Look, number 1, Mbeumo all day long. Bring Mbeumo to Spurs. He already knows Frank and his football. He's a brilliant player. Again, he's not necessarily the dribbly type, but I think we can complement that on the left-hand side, which we will get to in a minute. And at number 2, I've actually, and you probably would have guessed it by how much I've spoken about him, I would personally go for Yankuba Minter. Now, he's not as experienced as some of the other players. He, in my opinion, is a gem waiting to explode. He's only played a lot more minutes in the second half of the season, hence why he's less than some of these other players. But what this is showing me, and even just watching him on the weekends, when he's got the ball at his feet, he is very good. And more often than not, it leads to goals, which is, again, the most important thing. Is about being efficient if we're going to be playing this counter-attacking direct football sometimes. And then that leaves Mohamed Kudus third. Again, when I'm weighing up the fact that, high release clause, I think he's a fantastic dribbler, loves taking on his players. But there are just things that excite me a bit more about Minter. So that is why, in my preference for right wing for Tottenham, I'd go Mbeumo number 1, Yankuba Minter number 2, and then Kudus number 3. So let's move on to the left wing. I'm not going to go in as massive detail about each individual stat now, because hopefully you'd understand it from looking at the right winger one. I'm just going to be highlighting who has excelled in what area for the left wing and who is on my shortlist, which you can see right now. I think let's go. Okay, so these players came up the most. There were players that were better than them in some stats. I'm talking your Jeremy Doku's, Cunha. Like, these players also excelled in these stats, but obviously Cunha's already moved to Man United and we are never signing Doku, so I thought it was kind of pointless including those. In more realistic signings, and also Kevin Schade as comparison for another Brentford player, these are the people that have come up from my list, and that is Antoine Semenyo. No shock that we've been linked with him very recently. Mitoma. Eze I've included because I think he's almost this hybrid attacking mid left wing. Myself personally, I would use him in that 10 attacking mid role more, but he has played on the left. Anthony Elanga, okay, he has played on the right all season for Nottingham Forest. However, he is right-footed. Just like I said before about needing a left footer on the right, I think we're going to want a right-footed player on the left. And then if we look at Elanga the season before that, he played half of his games on the left wing, and he's played left wing a lot in the past. Now, you don't need to take my word for it. I've got it right here. This is Anthony Elanga. This is Transfer Market page. It shows you where they've played in what positions. Now, this is throughout his career across all seasons. He's played 55 times on the left wing and 63 on the right. So pretty similar numbers. He's actually played 39 times up front as well. He's actually got better stats on the left wing. Iliman Ndiaye from Everton, and obviously Kevin Schade from Brentford I've included, and then Callum Hudson-Odoi, who naturally has been playing on the left wing for Nottingham Forest as well. These were the sort of the key players that seem to appear a lot at the top of these statistics. So very quickly, who scored the most, who's assisted the most? I mean, Semenyo with 11, Schade with 11 as well. Again, this is just really showing how Brentford's output has been insane this season. The fact he's got 11 goals, not really spoken about as much when it comes to Brentford's front three. 0.2 shots per goal, same as Iliman Ndiaye. Assists, Elanga has been insane, 11 assists this season, Eze with 8. But yeah, just to quickly focus on this goals per shot again. Iliman Ndiaye is a player that I've watched for Everton this season and just been quite in awe actually of how he plays football. He's a very, very technically gifted player. And very clearly, when he does shoot, often it leads to goals. Again, someone who's very good at that is Mitoma. Someone who's really low down, actually, which I was quite surprised by, is Semenyo. The reason for this, he has a massive, and the same for Eze here, massive, massive high volume of shots compared to these other players. I think I noted it down here. He's number 1 for shots taken in the league across every position with 125 shots. And Eze was 6th in the league, I believe, with 100. So the reason why they might not score as many per shot is because they are taking way more shots than anyone else in the Premier League. But let's move on to the juicy bits and the bits that really what are going to make a successful winger at Spurs. Successful take-ons, Semenyo comes up the highest with 69. Just behind him Iliman and Dye, again, like I said, very good with his feet. I think the beauty with that I like about Semenyo as well, he is both-footed. He can use his right and his left, which the versatility will help Spurs. He can either play on the left side, he can play on the right, or even just, if he is solely on the left side, his ability to go and cut inside or go around the outside of defenders is also going to be key, because we need to attack in different ways. It's not going to be the same set way every single time. Now, it's interesting to note that actually Anthony Elanga doesn't really take players on that much. I think because of his play style, I mean, he is rapid. He is probably, I think he's the second fastest player in the league behind Van der Ven, which could work in a direct team, because more often than not, we can just hit a ball long to Elanga, use his pace to counter-attack. That way, he should already be ahead of the defender by the time he receives the ball. So maybe that's why his take-on stats aren't as good. But then again, look how successful Sade was at scoring goals this season, and he wasn't really someone that took players on either. So it's not the be-all and end-all. I think it just defines the type of players that these guys are. Now, when they do take a player on, does it lead to a shot? Again, Semenyo clears everyone 21 times. And this just shows that this guy's shooting so much for Bournemouth. And as we said before, goal creating action. So the 2 moments leading up to a goal, Anthony Elanga clears some of these players. Semenyo coming up high again. There's absolutely no wonder why we're being linked to this player. So onto crosses again. Like we said, crosses are going to be important for breaking down low blocks. That's what Thomas Frank said. Anthony Elanga again, 185 crosses. Look, again, could be skewed because I'm pretty sure he takes a lot of corner kicks. And I'm pretty sure they include that in the crosses data. But corners are a massive part of Thomas Frank's game. So if he's doing it a lot and he can do it very effectively, getting them into the box, which he seems to be able to do, same for Callum Hudson-Odoi down here, seems to be pretty decent. And then finally, who are good at winning the ball high up the pitch? Now, the best comes out as Iliman and Dye. Next is Matoma, next is Semenyo, and next is Kevin Sade. Like I said, all the Brentford players are so good at this, so it's no surprise that Kevin Sade is up on this list. What do I think of the players? Again, like I said, Semenyo, number 1 for shots taken, great dribbler with both feet. Matoma has a lot more experience than these players, coming in at 28 years old. He's a pretty decent all-rounder, as you can see. He seems to kind of cover all bases. He doesn't necessarily excel at one thing, but he seems to be pretty decent at a lot. Again, Eze, high volume of shots, fantastic creator and set piece taker. In my opinion, is better as an attacking mid, but could easily play both. Anthony Elanga has absolutely blistering pace. I think we know this. Iliman Dye is a good dribbler, very good with his feet, and a very efficient shooter. But he comes across as more of a goal-scoring threat than a creator, whereas, you know, someone like an Mbeumo can do everything. But he's also very good at pressing high and winning the ball high up the pitch. So finally, onto the scores in these positions. Like I said, it's just no surprise. Semenyo has come up clear for all of these. Next up actually is Elanga, which, to be fair, because I think he excels in a lot of areas, like the crossing and the assists. Followed by Eze, Mitoma, Iliman and Dye, Hudson-Odoi, and Kevin Sade. So my preference from looking at all of this data and obviously just watching the player in the Premier League anyway, my number 1 for the left wing would be Semenyo. I'm really not surprised at all that we're being linked with him, because he just seems to do everything well. He's shooting a lot. He crosses a fair bit, to be fair. He wins the ball high up the pitch. He's also a creator with key passes. A lot of the times when he can take on a player, and when he does, it leads to shots. It leads to goals. And at 25 years old as well, I think he is pretty much the sort of perfect age. You're just entering being a more experienced player in the Premier League. So he is someone that excites me a lot, and I think would be my number 1 choice out of these lot from the Premier League. Number 2, I've actually gone for Iliman and Dye for a couple of reasons. I know that Mitoma comes up higher. I know that Elanga comes up higher. However, I'm trying to think of what players would complement our new right wing signing as well. As I mentioned earlier, if we go for someone that's like an Mbeumo, they can create a lot. There will be a lot of crosses coming in from that right hand side. So I want a player on the left hand side that, one, is very, very good at dribbling, because we don't really have that profile. I mean, we've got Odebear, potentially Tell, but they are so young and a bit inexperienced, whereas Semenyo is a fantastic dribbler, is older, has done it properly in the Premier League, and I really see him complementing someone like Mbeumo on the right hand side really, really well. And I think that with Iliman and Dye as well. Again, like I said, I think he's a brilliant dribbler. He's very efficient when it comes to his shooting. He just doesn't necessarily create for other players. and doesn't cross a lot. But like I said, if you do make an Mbeumo type signing, put Mbeumo on the right-hand side, have Iliman and Dye on the left-hand side. And again, I think they complement each other quite well. Someone like an Elanga, for example, I think is a good option. I've put him tied third with Matoma. I think he's a very different player. I think this left winger, we should really prioritize someone that is better at dribbling as opposed to just being really quick and can get on the end of long balls. Eze, look, Eze is an obvious number one for me as well. I've wanted Eze for the longest time, but I see him more as an attacking mid, like I've said multiple times before. So I've kind of not put him number one for a pure left wing signing. However, if push comes to shove and it's a situation where we can't sign a number 10 and a left winger, we need someone that could play both, especially if we're looking for a right winger as well, then I would choose Eze, because the fact that he can cover both positions, he's got a release clause this year of 65 million, I think it is. He is just a fantastic footballer. I would absolutely love Eze at Spurs, but if we're just talking pure out and out left wingers from the Premier League, Semenyo is my choice. Okay, so that's it for this video. My choices for left wing and right wing would be Semenyo and Mbeumo for Spurs, which absolutely I can 100% see why they are the main links for Spurs. The data backs it up. We know that's what Thomas Frank is about. If we're looking for more dark horse options, ones that aren't really spoken about enough, I would 150% consider Minter for that right-hand side. And my dark horse signing for the left side would be Iliman and Dye from Everton. Now, of course, this was just the Premier League and football is played across the world. If you want to see me do this video again, but with players from across Europe's top 5 leagues, then let me know in the comment section down below. And if you want to understand a little bit more about Thomas Frank and his tactics across the board, then make sure to watch this video right here. And as well as that, I will be covering other positions. So when we move on to defensive midfield, when we move on to the number 10, when we move on to centre back, those videos are going to be shown right here. Like, subscribe. See you guys next time.